we doing this? Am I on? Okay.
Am I in the shot?
Hi everybody. All right. Good? So today I'm going to show you how to make a box out of Coroplast. So it's a bit of a change from what we did in the last series of videos where we worked with board. This time we're working with corrugated plastic material. And we need to screw it together as opposed to gluing it. Okay, so we're starting with our sheet of material, but we need to cut it to size because it's a little bit bigger than anticipated. So I'm just going to cut it quickly. I'll measure it first. I realize this is just a little short. That's okay. So 41.5. Does this throw off your video? I hope not. Just 1.5. Okay. So when working with Coroplast, it's a pretty good material. If you go against the corrugations, you have to give it a little bit more muscle to get through it. When you go with the corrugations, it cuts like butter. It's really easy to work with. Coroplast can also be a little bit on the staticky side. If you drop it on the ground by accident, it will pick up all the dirt and hair, but it's easy to clean. If you, nice.
Sorry.
Hey man.
Just try.
Whatever you like. Corrugated board comes in different thicknesses. This one we're working with is 4 mil. If you end up getting 6 mil board, it's harder to find. But if you get it, you can't fold it. And we need to be able to fold this material. Okay? So now I'm starting with my piece that's ready to go. And we're going to start with the base. Okay? So because we're making a 2-part box like we worked with in our last video, it's the exact same thing. So once that you've cut your board to size, the beautiful thing about making a 2-part box is all you need to do is measure your inner dimensions. You don't have to measure across and down, which is pretty complicated. And so in this case, our lid and our base are all 9.3 centimeters. So we're going to do the exact same thing. So doing the math is the hardest part. And once you've figured it out, it's good to go. So I'm using translucent material, which is nice. It comes in different colors. I like either white or translucent. If you ever want to use it and then turn it over, you can still see your measurements on the back, especially if you're using a pen or a Sharpie, which is nice. Another feature. When we get into making the boxes for the glass plate negatives, this will be a feature because we'll be needing to switch the board back and forth. So you can use a bone folder with Coroplast, no problem. However, I like a little bit more of a sharp edge, so I'm just going to use the pointy side on the dull part of the blade as my scoring. Just applying that much more pressure. So we're making the base first. You have the option whether or not you want to make this a drop front or not, and you can still use the same measurements. I'm going to make this a drop front just to make it a little bit different. But again, if you did not want to make it a drop front, all you would do is just watch your trimming. Let me do the other side. You can see the score shows up quite nicely. It's very easy to see as opposed to the corrugated board where you almost have to run your finger over it. So you can clearly see the scoring on the board. It's pretty visible. Okay, so the one thing that you have to keep in mind when you work with Coroplast is, again, we want to actually screw this together. We don't want to glue it. So opposed to when we worked with boards before, paper boards, that we did a diagonal cut and then adhered the flap into the inside of the box, we're just going to make our trim just slightly larger and then we're just gonna cut this whole square away, okay? And then what we want to do is that this flap, we're actually going to screw into. So again, the direction of these corrugations is really important. So I'm gonna use the screw just for 1 second. So when we go to cut, again, we want this to just be wide enough. So we want it to be about, you know, the width of the screw head, just enough. So we'll make it about that much wider. And again, we want to be really aware of the direction of the corrugations. So in this case, when we screw in, we want them to go through a number of different layers. So you can see how that works. Otherwise, the screw will literally just go into the hole. We don't want that. We want it to go through because that's what's going to create the hold. Okay? So again, I'm going to create this as a drop front box. So I'm going to cut these completely on the score, and then 2 edges I'm going to leave slightly wider. So again, you want to make sure you apply a good amount of pressure when you cut, especially against the corrugations. And as I said, once you go with the corrugations, it is a lot easier to go. So you want to be careful with the with any cuts that you make, because you do get sharp corners and sharp edges. If you have a corner rounder, you want to use it to, you know, again, make that your edges that much nicer. By all means, a corner rounder does a beautiful job on Coroplast, even up to 6 mil. It's very nice. But again, it can be a little bit sharp, so you want to watch your corners. Okay, so we've done our first bottom 2. Again, just basic straight cuts, but we're going to make this edge just that much wider when we go. Okay? So I'm eyeballing it. If you want to take a screw, sort of measure it out, figure out how much room you want, by all means you can do that. It's up to you. Okay? So I'm just leaving that much edge, and I'm cutting right down to that score line we had before. Okay? And I want it to go all the way to the corner. Last little bit of plastic there. Again, I just eyeballed this one. You can trim it after. It is tricky, but you can. So now we have our piece ready to go. Okay? Beautiful. All right, so we're gonna fold it. And we're gonna fold into the score. And it does a nice job. Okay? So pretty easy to go from there. And again, you can see it's a little wide. You can trim it back if you want to. Maybe I'll take that opportunity just to make it a little bit tighter, because it will help us close the box after the fact. And I did eyeball it. And it's much easier to do the cutting now before you do the screws than after. If you want, you can unscrew it. I just don't like to, but it's up to you. Also, if you're desperate for the screws. The number of screws you need depends on really what you're going to put in the box and how big you make it. I find, again, for our demo, that 2 screws is enough, but if you really want to go to town and put 3 in, you could. Okay, so I'm going to use some screws. I like number 6 screws and about 1 inch long. These are just from Rona, pretty boring, but I've used the same screws for years and they do a great job. So I'm going to use 4 screws. And I have a multi-head screwdriver. Here's a tip, if anybody is a Uline fan, I love Uline, that if you order a certain amount of product, you can get a free multi-head screwdriver. Excellent. The other thing that I like to also say is that if you don't want people stealing your tools, buy pink ones. I don't know why, people don't like to steal pink tools. Okay, so we're gonna do the join, all right? You You don't need to pre-drill the holes, because you want to make sure you have as much grab with your screws as possible. And this material is wonderful to work with, and the screws will sink right in. Okay, so I'm going to start pretty high up. So what I'm going to start with is actually just sort of pre-drilling the screws, but just with the screwdriver. So I want the first screw to be pretty high up. Okay, so, and it's harder to screw right on the corrugation, so you really want to go to start with the channels. So I'm going to go sort of second from the top. Okay, so I just pushed it in with my finger just to sort of start it. And again, if you want, oops, you can use the screwdriver. Oops, I picked the bigger one. Okay, and I'm just going to start it. Just gives you a bit more to go on. There we go. Just have to apply a little bit of pressure to poke it through. And the bottom one, again, I want to go pretty low. You can go halfway if you want, but again, I really wanted to make it a nice seal as much as possible. So I'm gonna I literally just poked it in, just to at least get it sort of started, and then I'm just screwing it in, so you can see it's poking through the plastic. You guys all see okay? Cool. All right, cool. For the sake of the demo, I'm just going to do the 2 screws, but essentially you would do it with both. Okay, so once you're ready to go, essentially you bring your flap up, and then you're going to just align your screws ready to go. So I'm going to show the people on this side. So you bring this up, and the screws will get ready to align, okay? And then it's literally just as easy as screwing it in. So you can see, that's another reason I like the translucent material, is you can just see the screw go right in. And it's just gripping the plastic. You guys can see that good with your camera? Okay, so once you get all the way, I try to leave it flush, okay? One thing is that it is flexible. So if you want to over screw it, I'll show you what it's like. You can see how it just starts to pucker a little bit.
Right.
So you don't necessarily need to do it. So I just like to have it so it's just enough. And as you can also see, if you over screw, you sort of push the board out a little bit. So you just want to make it just enough that it just stays. Now, oh, this is the tricky one. So at the bottom, again, you want to just make sure it finds its way to start with. You don't accidentally screw it, and then you realize it's on the outside of your box and it did nothing. Has happened several times. Okay. So it's really quick and easy to make a box with this material that's very strong. Again, if you were concerned about any sharp edges, you could, if you wanted to, go over the edges of your box with some sort of tie-back tape or something and seal it up. It's just one more step. I don't find it's that worth it, but again, it makes for a nice box. So I'm going to leave the demo for now, but essentially that's how you do the Coroplast base. Great.